I'm blowing up, oh yeah, I'm being famous. Yeah, like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar about to die, soon to be hyper-inflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Join be decentralized, and you will see you've been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, and up your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I've never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. And you're telling lies, I know what they be telling you. I'm the opposite of Donald Trump of Australia.
Hey guys and girls, not a Trump fan, but yeah, just thought I was listening to this song beforehand. It was a rap song that I did with a mate going back about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. Never actually launched it, which talked about the hyperinflation, talked about where we are today. Yeah, just interesting times, interesting looking back. So I just want to do a video tonight, which could be one of my best videos yet that you guys would love. Just seeing a message has come through. Good to see you all on board, guys. Michael Burry there. Maybe call that. I don't have a glass eyeball, but he was before of his times. Today, I want to look at all things currency. Where does currency come from? Where does currency come from, and the origins of money. I want to go and explore a few different rabbit holes this evening. I'm actually not going to do the typical I'll answer all your questions sort of thing. I'm going to just try and stick to one topic and maybe some questions at the end. So if you've got some feedback, if you have whatever, just feel free to post. Post whatever you got as a thought or a comment, or if you like what I'm saying, smash up that like button. If I can just ask before I get started tonight, I'm going to try and keep this more like a webinar sort of type video today. If I can just ask you to tag your mates into this, if you think they need to get a better relationship with money, if you think that they need to understand what's happening out there, if you've got community, people you care about, maybe share it on your page if you like. What I do, obviously make sure you subscribe and like this channel, and if you can give me a review on here, that'll be fantastic as well, guys. So yeah, just hopping straight into it. Today I want to talk about where currency comes from. There is a big difference between currency and money. I'm just having a look here. Bring back the swear words. And thanks for having a chat with me and my wife. Good having a chat with beforehand, Lachlan. And yeah, I actually do need to get the water. So yeah. And yeah, just as Sam says here, welcome to all the new subscribers to Birchfeed. If you are not on Birchfeed, I'm giving it away at the moment. Anyone that wants to be a part of Birchfeed, there is no way of getting access to it apart from contacting my office. It is for free. It used to be $1 a day, and there's a lot of cheap fucks out there that did want to spend $1 a day, but I'm hearing good reviews from it. I'm giving it away for free to everyone at the moment. Lots of information to understand and to take in, and I try and share as much information as I can with you on a daily basis or whatnot. However, I can't always do these videos. I'm very, very busy. So yeah, with it, welcome to Birchfeed, everyone. So today I want to talk a little bit about where currency comes from, who creates it, and look at some of the history in it. I want to look at this chart here, which I might just pin up on the wall so you can see it behind me for the moment. That is interest rates going down. This is the 1990s. This is 91, 2000, 2011, 2019, and if we were to put 2020, we'll probably be here at 0%. If we look at later part of 2020, we're probably going to be at -% anyway. So, going to look about a few different things. going to entertain you. Yes, it is live now, Lydia. Thanks for hopping on board. Got this fucking communist fucking lizard. Look at him. He looks like a lizard. Looks like a fucking imbecile. Anyway, has the coronavirus scamdemic revealed the Reserve Bank has lost control of its economy? The economy they had lost control of many times before, and this time they haven't lost it yet. But do you know when you see someone just doing donuts at Summer Nats or something, and you can see like this guy's a dickhead, and he's going to fly out, he's going to take out someone, take out himself or whatever. It hasn't happened yet, but they have lost control of it, and there's no way of regaining it. So, with it, just says here, it's from the Communist channel ABC, it has passed largely unnoticed with the panic induced by escalating health crisis and stock markets ravaged by relentless selling. In the past week, however, something far more insidious has begun to unfold, which threatens to unhinge the global economy and thwart efforts to repair our financial systems in what is shaping up to be even worse and severe run than the events of 2008. Look, 2008, everyone says, the depression of the 1920s, the Great Depression, right? This has got nothing to do with the Great Depression. The Great Depression will look like the fucking good old days by the time we finish with this. People, this is unseen beforehand. This is not the Great Depression. This is not the recession of 2008. It is the GFD, Global Financial Depression, the one which unhinges all of the central banks around the world, and unfortunately will tie us down to a communist-style agenda, which we haven't seen beforehand. IMF will ultimately rule and bail everyone out. And it actually says here, like I'm just reading, it's the first time I've read it actually. Why is this happening? There have been endless warnings about the enormous build-up of debt, particularly amongst the big corporations, especially the American companies. Over the past few years, American corporate debt has ballooned out to $19 trillion, right, dollars. The International Monetary Fund, get used to that word because you're going to understand that when they do a thing called a special drawing rights and bail out the central banks of all the countries around the world, has been banking on it for years. While the day of reckoning was always expected, no one anticipated a health issue would be a catalyst. Wow, that was posted on the 19th of March, guys, right? I was saying, like the GFD, I never would have pictured that they'd blame it on some guy eating a bat. But anyway, it's interesting. They're starting to put it out in the media, starting to call it for what it is. I want to talk about money, right? So the word money refers to, sorry, I'm in my $1 billion shirt jacket today. Where does money come from? Money is gold, silver, those sorts of assets. A lot of people out there talk about gold and silver. Currency is a word that we need to remember, because currency is what we're using. Basically, does anyone know where the money comes from? Everyone, if you go and ask a school teacher, they'll say, it comes from the mint, the government prints it. Who prints money, right? Like, we've just borrowed $300 billion in the last week to pay for the economy to keep going. 1 week, right? The GFC, Australia, printed $80 billion or $90 billion. That's over like 2 years. We've just printed $300 billion in a week, and that's just from a federal level. We're going to be in $1 trillion debt shortly, right? Anyone remembers in the 90s and they go, John Howard is a great guy. Like, I thought John Howard was a great guy. I bought into all that. Apart from the fact he worked for the RBA and, certain sort of groups of people that he represents. He inherited from the Labor Party from the early 90s like $90 billion worth of debt. And he took him like 10 years, 12 years to pay out that debt, which were in the middle of the GFC, and we had a surplus for like a blip second. There's like $100 billion that escalated over a decade and lasted for over a decade. And we've just printed up in a week 3 times that amount. The question I ask you is, like, this is the government. Where is the government borrowing it from? Doesn't the government print the money? Right? Who prints it? Who do we owe the debt to? Is it China we owe the money to? Is it America that we owe the money to? Who is actually, responsible for this money? And it's a very good point, a very good question that a lot of people ask. And money, or currency, everyone calls it money, that's why I call it money. But currency is just something that's created out of thin air, right? Like back in the old days, if you notice that you have your coins like the 5-cent piece, the 10-cent piece, the 20-cent piece, the 50-cent piece, they're all like silver, and they represent silver because coins used to be made out of silver. You look at the gold coins, and they're gold; they represent gold, but they actually, got nothing in them. So they're not gold, they're not silver. They're just copper and nickel and whatnot, just very cheap metals to look like that they were money. They're money. Back in the old days, they tried to counterfeit money by making new coins and printing it, for making new notes and pieces of paper with dead criminals printed on them. But more rapidly nowadays, they don't even have to print it. They just do an IOU, and they put enter a digit into the system. If you go buy a property, when you go and purchase a property, there's no money there, right? They put an IOU, the bank gives them digits, they then go and print the digits, send them over to another bank, and basically, it's just traded out of thin air. There's a thing called a fiat currency, which is what we're using. Back in the first hyperinflation, actually quite funny, because the first hyperinflation, or the first fiat currency was created and died in 1024 AD. So almost 1,000 years ago, a currency was created. It was created in China, and China experienced the first fiat currency, which they made fake money. Everyone says, they made fake everything. But yeah, with it, I was just looking at my funny stuff here. I'll show it to you later. But they made fake money, and they had a hyperinflation. It died in a hyperinflation. And since 1024 AD, there's literally been thousands of currencies that have been created. The average one has lasted about 27 years, 28 years. The currency we use at the moment, which is Aussie dollar, it was the transition from the pounds and the pence to the dollars and the cents. And I want to look at specific dates when these things were created. This was created in 1966 in Australia, but the real scam occurred 5 years later. So if we look at Australia, the RBA was built in 1959. Exactly 5 years later, it was actually Valentine's Day, 14th of February, 1959. How romantic's that? The nation of Australia got fucking royally screwed on Valentine's Day via the banking cartel. And 5 years later, they did the transition, which was C-Day, where they changed from the metric system, from the imperial system into the metric system, turning your shillings, your sixpence, your threepence, and whatnot into dollars and cents and whatnot. So that's when we changed to our dollar. And in 1971, there's this guy called President Nixon. They call him Tricky Dick Nixon. Deleveraged the world from a gold standard, so it's not backed by gold. The money's backed by nothing, and changed it via a guy called Henry Kissinger. Did a deal and created OPEC and created the petrodollar, which is the dollar that we use at the moment. They removed a currency at the time from the gold standard and the Bretton Woods system, and hooked it into the petrodollar. And basically anyone to trade petrol, oil around the world needs to use US dollars. It's a standard. There has been 3 times when people have tried to trade outside of the US dollar. That has occurred in 2001 and 2003, I believe, where Gaddafi and Saddam were killed within 6 months. Gaddafi tried trading oil in gold, and Saddam tried trading oil in euros. And basically, the third time where it occurred was around the 28th of March 2018, and there was a 5-part webinar series that I put out there recently, going back 2 years ago, which talked about this, and that's when we saw President Trump go and put Hollywood into Korea. There's a lot of political things that go on to try and manipulate these systems, but they're coming up with their last chances of being able to survive with this system. So some of the recent fiat currencies there are. There's this thing here called a continental. This is off investopedia.com. This was updated on the 3rd of October 2019, and it's called a continental. What is a continental? Continental refers to a paper currency, being a fiat currency, issued by the Continental Congress, 1775, to help fund the American Revolutionary War. Continental refers to the paper currency issue, understanding continentals. Specifically, continentals, which were what they were nearly minted colonial paper money, was called, were issued from 1775 to 1779. So that's only printed for 4 years. This money only lasted for 4 years, from 1775 to 1779. To finance the cost of war. The currency quickly lost its value, partly because it was not backed by a physical asset like gold or silver, but also due to the fact that too many bills were printed. These two factors contributing to the coining of the disappearing term not worth a continental. Revolutionaries in the New World colonies floated continentals due to not having the funding to carry out the long battle against the British Crown. In 1775, the Continental Congress issued $2 million worth of paper bills in credit. The paper notes represented the colonies' first significant currency distribution and bore the images of revolutionary soldiers. Continentals were not backed by any tangible asset. They were supposed to hold their value if the continental progress expected of future tax revenues, which, given that they were in the midst of a war, created more uncertainty than currency could withstand. The revolutionaries continued printing money until ultimately it issued more than $200 million in rebel currency. That's $200 million they printed. Within 5 years, continentals suffered a significant appreciation and eventually were practically worthless. To contribute to the devaluation of the continentals, the British produced enormous quantities of counterfeit bills to sabotage the American economy. Afterward, the colonies held considerable debt from the war. We are owning debt at the moment. We're printing money. This $300 billion that was printed as a stimulus came from where? I want to know where it came from. Can someone ask? If you don't understand where it came from, or whatever the case may be, tell me where is the money coming from? Worthless continentals. Congress stopped issuing continentals in 1779. By 1785, the continental currency was so remarkably worthless that people just stopped accepting the bills as payment for goods and trades. Economic worries plagued the young nation as its leaders faced challenges of paying back war debts. The leaders also had to establish its first financial institutions in an attempt to reduce inflation and restore the value of the nation's money. That is where we are right now. This is history. I'm going to pull out a shitload of these things to talk about this evening, guys. Stabilise the economy, correct the currency financial troubles, and Alexander Hamilton proposed an idea of a national bank. The national bank would issue paper money and handle the government's tax revenues and debts, among with other functions. The idea came to fruition in December 1791, and the Bank of the United States opened in Philadelphia. The creation of the national bank led to the adoption of the US dollar, USD, during the following year. The invention was the US Mint, the Federal Monetary System, and the US Coinage Act of 1792, all quickly replaced the paper continentals. These systems have since evolved to become the nation's contemporary money system. So we have a little bit of an understanding from that. And then we head to a greenback. What is a greenback? It's actually the heading here. What is a greenback? A greenback is a slang term used for US paper dollars. Greenbacks got their name from their colour. In the mid-1800s, the Continental Congress did not have taxing authority. The greenback was a negative term because they did not have a secure financial backing authority, and the banks were reluctant to give the customers full value of the dollar. Understanding greenbacks. It took a half a century to get all foreign coins and competing state currencies out of circulation, but by the early 1800s, the US was ready to try the paper money experiment again. Banknotes have been in circulation for a while, but because the banks issued more notes than they had coins to cover, these notes often to trade less than in the 1860s. The US created over $400 million in legal tender to finance its war against itself. The government had early issued bonds to raise capital. However, the war's timeline depleted its finances. The idea of issuing paper money was opposed to by the bankers because it would bring the federal government into markets and could potentially translate to its bankruptcy. If the war failed it to go in its favour, to prevent such an eventuality, the paper's money value depended on the health of the individual banks issuing the currency. They were called greenbacks simply because the backs were printed in green. The government backed this currency and stated it could be used to pay back public and private debts. However, despite its government backing, they were not exchangeable for gold or silver. Demand notes versus paper notes. Greenbacks came in two forms, demand notes and US paper notes. Demand notes, which were issued in 1861 and 1862 to pay for salaries and the government expenses during the Civil War. In February 1862, the Legal Tender Act saw the government issue paper notes which could ultimately become the official currency of the US as demand notes were phased out. During this period, the value fluctuated according to the North's success or failure at certain stages of the war. However, due to the size of the issue, $400 million, the value of the greenbacks against gold steadily declined. According to H.W. Brand's book, The Greenback Planet, How the Dollar Conquered the World and How Threatened Civilization as We Know It, the value of the greenback had temporarily recovered in value after the Battle of Gettysburg before plummeting to a value of 258 greenback to 100 gold, its lowest point in 1864. The war ended in 1864 and the value of the greenback recovered to 150 greenback to 100 gold. Greenbacks are reported to have funded 15% of the war's cost, but the rise in their value also increased cost of everyday goods and supplies. Inflation was 14% in 1862, 25% in 1863 and 1864. Today, the term the greenback is an anecdotal term used for foreign exchange traders of the US dollar. So basically, we have seen, hey Ronnie, how are you? Subjective privilege. This is a scam. Scamdemic, guys. There's a comment in there. The Australian pound. All right, let's look at the Aussie dollars and what sort of currencies we have had. With it, the Australian pound, the symbol, the pound was the currency of Australia from 1910 to 1966 when it was replaced by the Australian dollar. As with other pound currencies, it was subdivided into 20 shillings, 12 pence. This is off Wikipedia. I don't even know why I printed this. In September 1910, the Federal Labor Government of Prime passed that year. There was, I'm going to stop reading these. I'm going to go straight to the side and look up some of these things here just so I can run through it with you. If we look up continental money, once again, there's lots of different currencies there. If we look up the Australian pound, it's much easier reading it from a device. The history of it. The Act also prohibited the circulation of state notes and withdrew their status as legal tender. It also gave control over the issue of Australian notes to the Commonwealth Treasury. Also that year, the Bank Notes Tax Act, which imposed a prohibitive tax of 10% per annum on all banknotes issued or reissued by any bank in the Commonwealth after the commencement of the Act, and not had redeemed, which effectively ended the use of the private currency in Australia. Let's have a look here to a few important dates. Decimalisation. In February 1959, the Commonwealth Government appointed a decimal currency committee. So these dates that I'm actually going to say right now are really, really important, because as we head into a point where our currency is devalued, just remember, right, the cost of goods don't go up in value. The money that you're buying it with is losing its value, and you need more of them to buy the said task. As money is losing its value, it happens, they all die via hyperinflation. They all die with massive inflation after they print too much money, which is backed by nothing. Just remember this date. In February, remember, February 1959, the Commonwealth Government appointed a decimal currency committee to investigate the advantages and disadvantages of a decimal currency, and if a decimal currency was favoured, the unit of account and denomination as a subsidiary currency most appropriate for Australia, the method of introduction and the cost involved. It's really long. You can read it up yourself. Once you go back to, so just remember that date in February. On this day. So this is from Australian Geographic. You want to look it up yourself. Reference is, on this day, Australia switches from pounds to dollars. C Day brought change to Australia in the form of a decimal currency. On the morning of 14th of February 1966, Australia's shops, banks, ticket offices opened their doors and ushered in the age of decimal currency. Curious citizens formed long queues to exchange their pounds and pennies for brand new dollars and cents. Changeover Day, sorry, just getting calls, or C Day, went off without a hitch. The Sydney Morning Herald reported the smoothness of the change, the efficiency of the business people, and the good humour of the public delighted decimal currency board officials. Perhaps the biggest hiccup came within the 6-year-old Kim Taylor, who became the first Australian child to swallow the decimal coin. Anyway, can read up about that. My phone's going nuts here because people are trying to call me. Gone through the pound already. I want to go here and look at the Reserve Bank of Australia. So if you remember the dates, right? February 1959, they started a look into decimal currency. If you go to Wikipedia right now, look it up on another device and you can watch it with me. Reserve Bank of Australia. The Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, i.e. the boss of everything, the one that controls all of us, is Australia's central bank and banknote issuing authority. It had its role since the 14th of January in 1960, when the Reserve Banking Act of 1959 removed the central banking functions from the Commonwealth Bank. So that's when the Commonwealth Bank went out and the RBA came in. If you go to the rba.gov.au website, you'll find the website here. As I always say, does that not look a little bit satanic there? It looks like fucking, I don't know, a satanic mask or the devil's mask, I don't know. But if you go down to the bottom of the page, it actually states here, copyright, Reserve Bank of Australia 2001 to 2020, all rights reserved. If you go to the About Us page, which they just changed recently, it says here the Reserve Bank of Australia is Australia's central bank and derives its function and powers from the Reserve Bank Act of 1959. So in 1959, they decided to look at decimal currency, and in 1959, the RBA became the boss of Australia. Its duty is to create stability of the currency, full employment, economic prosperity. It provides certain banking services as required to the Australian government and its agencies, right? If I am Nathan, I do not provide banking services to Nathan, right? Because if I'm providing to something else, then it's not me, right? So just think about this. And I see we've got a subjective privilege comment here. We've got a lawyer in the house. The RBA provides certain banking services as required to the Australian government, meaning that it's not the Australian government, and its agencies, meaning it's not one. They've changed the wording there slightly recently. However, it's important to go and find out who owns these places and where they come from. If we go down through looking at some of the numbers, through the Wikipedia, it says both boards consist of members of both the Bank, Treasury and other Australian government agencies and leaders of institutions that are part of the economy. What are those institutions? Who are you people? Where is the money from? So when the $300 billion was just created the other week, it came from the RBA. They're the ones that created the money, or the currency, and issued more currency. So I'm going to come back to that in a second with the interest rates. So a lot of people ask me, when will interest rates go back up? What happens when interest rates go up? all that sort of stuff, which if you understand a good game of chess, you'll realize when it becomes time to say checkmate. So from the middle of the 19th century to the 1890s, the prospects of national bank forming grew. In 1911, the Commonwealth Bank was established, but it did not have the authority to print notes, which was a power that was still reserved to the Treasury. A movement towards re-establishing the gold standard occurred after World War I. Don't care who these criminals are. During the Great Depression, the Australian pound became devalued, no longer worth the same as a pound sterling, and formally departed the gold standard with the Commonwealth Bank Act of 1932. So if we understand when the depression came in, right, remembering that we're not in a depression yet, but we're going to be in a depression, because a depression doesn't just happen overnight. We are in a global financial depression. Unlike ever before, this is a depression which involves the whole world. The Australian pound became devalued, no longer was what it is. So it lost all of its value during the Depression. Why did that happen? Did they stimulate the economy? Did they print more money off? Right? We've got to look at what happened then, what is happening now. Legislation in 1945 led to the regulation of private banks, with H.C. Coombs proposed to, and became a governor in 1949. He gave them more overall control to the institution. Monetary authorities implemented the advice of Coombs to a flexible interest rate. It allowed the bank to rely more on open market operations. In 1980, it issued of short-term government bonds, treasury notes of 13 and 26 weeks duration, changed the tap in the system in which the price was set to attend the system. Keep going down. Just having a look here at some other notes that are important for us and specific dates which have occurred. The roles and responsibilities. It is currently governed by the Reserve Bank Act of 1959, which is approved in Parliament. The Reserve Bank's board and duty stated in the Act within its outlined boundaries is to ensure that the bank's monetary and banking policy is used to help the Australian population. This should be accomplished through consultation with the government. So in the Reserve Bank's board opinion, that its powers are used to help with the stability of the currency of Australia, the maintenance of full employment in Australia, and economic prosperity and welfare. It may as well be warfare. It's the date of when it came in was at the same time that we switched from the metric to the imperial to the metric system. Looking at key dates, they've come in and changed things, guys. If we have a look at this currency of what we've got at the moment, I've got a few little notes here, but I'll first get this put very close to the screen. Right? And this here is the interest rates, as we can see from over here. This is in the 1990s. The downward trend of interest rates would be there. That would be a trend line. If I was a technical person, that's what I'd be looking at, or maybe a little bit lower. But anyway, interest rates can't go up. We're heading here at 2020. We're almost at zero last year. We're now at zero. Let's understand something, right? So we are now in 2007. The RBA's rate was 7.25%. Right? In 2009, it was 3%. That was a loss of 66%. If we see property prices in Sydney, which were 300k at the time, which are now 650,000, when the property boom happened, the reason being is that someone still on $60,000 could afford to pay a purchase price of that with the new lower interest rate. We had a little bit of a joke here. This used to be a whiteboard cleaner. It's Code Cure. One of my guys decided to wash his hand the other day using this stuff. So it was a good way of avoiding the scamdemic. Don't do this now. That's all that, just shake it up. So what we've got to understand is how does the dollar lose its value? We've now got an interest rate of point. We've now got a cash rate of 0.25%. Beforehand, at this time last year, it was 1.50%. So in real terms, it's lost like 5/6 of its value. Right? If we look at this rate now at 0.25% as an interest rate, we've now seen, what are we seeing happening in the economy at the moment? We are seeing businesses take up a 250k loan at 0.25% interest rate. We are seeing the government, communism, take out $300 billion at 0.25%. We're seeing property owners taking out loans at 0.25%. The list goes on, right? If everyone's hooked on this cheap credit at 0.25%, if the interest rate was to go to 0.50%, which is only doubling what it is, so interest rate is at 0.25%. If it goes back to 0.5%, which it was last month, effectively the cost of money has gone up 100%. So will the government be able to afford to repay double the amount on their books? They can't afford it as it is. Can a property owner afford to pay double the amount? Can a business afford to pay double the amount? Now imagine if it goes back to 1%, that is 400% of its value where people are getting the money from today. So effectively, we're at a point where we're at checkmate, where people cannot, where the RBA cannot actually increase rates because it will have a massive, massive impact onto the economy. If you guys want to ask some questions, feel free to ask some questions now while I clean this board off and get back to some other diagrams of how I see this playing out. If we have a look at an example, right, and this is what happens with any currency. There is numerous currencies that have been created. This has been 48 years as of the 15th of, if you think about it, why is it always on the 15th, right? I don't even know I'll keep writing this, but the 15th of August 1971 was when the US dollar became the petrodollar. The 15th of Jan, no, it's 14th of Jan. These certain dates, have a look at the dates, look at what happened at certain points in history when these things had occurred. And sidetrack, because I've got a whole pile of examples here to show you guys. So let's assume we're printing off money at the moment, or currency at the moment. See the comments coming through. I've got a comment here that says, from Stephen, that the loans we get are not the RBA rates. No, but businesses do work off a thing called a bank bill swap rate, which means that it could be the cash rate plus a premium. So let's assume that we have a rate of 0.25%, and let's say the swap rate is 1.5 or 2%. That means it'll be 2.25 or 1.75. So if it's the rate over the top will transpire to being what you're paying on a business or on a commercial facility. If it's currently 25 basis points and there's a premium of say 2% on it, that's 2.25. Now, if that goes back to 2%, that's now 4%. It's a very big difference. It's of how it works. So we're at a checkmate situation where the governments can't move. They're borrowing this debt, which is very, very cheap. They've started a stimulus package, which is eroding the value of the dollar. I want to talk about the value of our currency. So let's assume that we have $1 million. This is just a hypothetical scenario, guys. Let's say that there's $1 million out there in the country of Australia. Let's assume that that's broken down and maybe give me some ideas of service. So let's say food, let's say retail, let's say real estate, let's say cars, let's say stocks, whatever the case may be. Let's say that we've got these 5 pools here. Let's say food's worth 100, let's say food's worth 10 mil, let's say retail's worth 20 mil, let's say real estate's worth 20 mil, 50 mil, cars are worth 20 mil, and stocks are worth 30 mil. Let's assume that that's the value of all the assets, right? Now, let's say that we double this money supply at an extra 1 million, actually, it's 1 mil, so we're already inflating the currency. That's how easy it is for the governments to just play around with the currency by using printing of money. So let's assume that we add an extra that looks really weird there, guys. Let's assume we add an extra $1 million to the economy. So our total amount of money in the system is now $2 million, right? We've just pumped all this liquidity in the system. Everybody's feeling rich again. What would happen with that money? Well, that would find its way here. So you might get an extra 500K, right? Here you might find another 1 mil, right? Here you might find another 2 mil. Here you might find another 2 mil. Here you might find another 1 mil. Wherever it goes, it doesn't add up. But anyway, the point being is that if you're doubling the money supply, it's going to find a home. Doesn't matter what segment of the economy that we're talking about or what we're looking at. It's going to find a home and it's going to find its place. So if you've got a house, I'm going to drop this all off the board. It's kind of weird doing a Facebook Live on a whiteboard. I never thought about doing this beforehand, but I thought I'd do it tonight just so we could answer some questions and push it out on the whiteboard session. So if we're looking at the economy and we've got a house at 200 grand or a unit at 200K, and you go and get a loan on it, for example, at a 20% deposit, which would be $40,000, meaning that you would have a loan of $160,000. Your loan, and everyone's going to say, what about when interest rate goes up or whatever? Let's go and look at that later. You would have a loan of $160,000. When they print more money, right, currently everybody in Australia, right, is getting paid $1,500 a fortnight. You're either getting Centrelink, getting some form of government assistance, you're a business and you're getting support. Not everyone is getting it, I understand that. Not all of my staff get it, all that sort of stuff, but it's a fantastic time because it's going to be really great. But if they're printing all this money, there's going to be a point where that finds its way into Woolworths, where it finds its way into McDonald's, where it finds its way into the petrol station, where it finds its way into whatever. And if we look at currency fluctuations, like the Aussie dollar that fell last week, it's obvious when the currencies fall just before a rate cut is that we're going to see the rate cut. Right? So whenever I ask me how does this happen, actually I'm just having a look here out of the corner of my eye. This chart that I pulled out for the interest rates beforehand, if we have a look here, the 10-year government bond yield very much closely tracks the interest rate. So if you go and look at what a prediction is for a 10-year bond yield. If you look at the prediction of a 1-year bond yield, generally that follows very closely with what the RBA's next move is. So if they're printing all this extra money, it's going to find a way to go. So firstly, the government cannot increase interest rates. But the RBA cannot, the government cannot afford for the RBA to increase the interest rates, otherwise it's going to go bankrupt. If we look at this money flowing down, if we were to see inflation on a property and that goes to, I'm drawing this, 400k, the property, has that doubled and gone to 400k? Or has the money that you've bought it with lost its value and now you need double the amount of money to buy it? The reason why I like property for is that one aspect of it is that my $40,000, if I take that 200 minus that off, that's $200,000 in profit. That $200,000 on my $40,000 is a 5 times return. Right? I'm not talking about cash flow. I'm not talking about anything else in this equation. Your loan on here still stays the same amount of $160,000. If we see, massive inflation with some of the currencies debase, this could transpire into some very, very interesting sort of scenarios here. If we look at, I saw this video the other day, so I'm not even going to claim that I came up with the concept of it, but I've talked about this stuff for a long time, and I forget the person that actually did the video. It's a US guy talking about real estate and inflation and the impacts of it on property, what could happen. So if we look at the cost of debt, if we put it on a graph just like the interest rates that we saw beforehand, that'd be so if we look at our debt, right? Got to look at stop using my vaccines there. If we look at debt here, and say that we've got, what would an average mortgage be? Give me a number. So say 400,000, right? If we have our debt there, our income over the years increases and inflates away. Right? So if we put on this line income, so our debt always stays the same. So if we're looking at today, you take up a loan. Let's take this off. We don't even need that figure. Today we take a loan. In 20 to 30 years, we go pay off our mortgage. Someone that might have started on, let's think about this, right? $40,000. Who remembers in the early 2000s, turn of the century, average wage in Australia was $40,000. Now it's $70,000. Now everybody that's got a job is getting paid $40,000. Everyone that's unemployed is getting paid $40,000. So the income increases over time, and that $40,000 buys less and less. But so you need to have more. So if we look at the cost of goods, so let's assume on your 40 grand income, you could buy a Big Mac at $5. On your 70k income, a Big Mac is $10. Your goods and income sort of stay in the same line. The reason why I like property for is your debt always stays the same, and debt becomes irrelevant with inflation. If we have a hyperinflation or a very high inflationary period, the cost of goods, this is where everybody, like, I guess having a hyperinflation, there's a lot of people here that have experienced hyperinflations in their own said country, whether in sort of Venezuela or Zimbabwe or whatnot. If that there's the income level, if we have hyperinflation, inflation happens a lot quicker. So the cost of goods, your income level, might turn to like 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand, where here it might be 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand over here. So the duration of it is much quicker. On that front, the debt is losing its value because you're paying off today's debt with tomorrow's dollars. Does everyone get that? If we look at the fact that we have rent coming through, let's say that we have another projection here. If we start stimulating the economy too much, our rent usually just improves with a bit of inflation over the years, right? That's why the value of the cash flow comes up. If I look at my parents' house, they bought that for $13,000, which was in the imperial system. Roughly converted to today's dollars would be 13 grand. Say 13 grand 50 years ago. Today, their property would be worth $1.2 million, or say $1 million just for the fun of it. If they still owed $13,000 debt on that property, the stamp duty for someone buying it today would be double what they paid for it. The rent for 6 months worth of rent would be double what they paid for it. If they had sold this property a year later for 50K, they would be like, at the time, that's fantastic. It would be like having a $1 million property and selling it for $3 million. You'd be like, wow, I've got $2 million I can throw in the bank, it'd be cool. 50K minus 13K, would mean there's 37K left over. They'd sit there and put $37,000 in the bank, and it would be very, very good at the time. However, $37,000 today wouldn't even buy a Toyota Camry brand new off the lot. So if we look at that sort of level of inflation and devaluation of the dollar, the rates and levels of where the money printing is going, do we know when the currency will lose all its value? I don't know, right? We don't know. If we go back throughout history and we look at every single time there's been a great catastrophe, the dollar loses its value and generally dies from a hyperinflation. It's unsustainable for the money to keep going at the same trajectory that it is at the moment. If we start seeing everything rise due to the fact that we're printing off so much fiat currency, we can very quickly see it devalue and lose its purchasing ability, which means this rent trajectory would also rise at such a greater level, and you can pay today's debt off with tomorrow's dollar. That, my friends, is why I like property with currency. The outcome of this, in my opinion, and obviously none of the stuff that says financial advice, I can be quite funny at times. So I'm just a funny guy on Facebook and social media. My projection of where things are going next isn't a hyperinflation today. They're going to print so much money. It's going to be the great print. They're printing money for businesses to stay alive. They're printing money for people to pay their bills and whatnot. But they are going to lose, as Channel Communist ABC has said with Mr. Philip Lowe here, the guy from the RBA. The Reserve Bank hasn't lost control of its position. It will lose that. If we look at every single country around the world, you will see stimulus packages coming in. The US is giving $1,500 a fortnight. The UK is giving $1,500 a fortnight. New Zealand is given $1,500 a fortnight. And it may not be $1,500. It could be, whatever their currency is converted, similar sort of figures. Businesses are getting $250,000 business loans. Job keeper packages being put together. And this is just the start of it, right? We haven't even seen a full lockdown here. This is the second week into, people shouldn't be communicating and going to the workplace or whatever the case may be. And this is very, very early stages. Imagine after 3 months. Imagine after 6 months. Imagine what it will look like when every company across the country. And this is the thing, people go, oh, things aren't too bad yet. Like, we're not going to go into a recession. You know, my super fund's okay. The stock market's okay. The reality is that we have not even seen a quarter of this. This has been like not even a month. Like a month ago, if someone says that you'd be under house arrest, um, sorry, I've just seen emails come through. It hasn't even been a month, right? Imagine after a quarter. Imagine after 6 months. Imagine when the end of financial year comes and each company on the stock market comes in and says that it's insolvent, it's bankrupt, now they've got no income for the last 6 months. Imagine the catastrophe which is going to come at that point. Is this a point to worry and run away and go, oh, should I better sell my property? Is it a chance that I should sell my shares? Should I sell out of my super fund? Right? We've seen the stock market fall by 40% in 4 weeks. However, we have seen it lift up a lot. Why did it move upwards? The reason why is that the central bank, the RBA, is purchasing up assets off the market, paper assets, in order to stimulate the markets. And, you know, they're not allowing anyone to go bankrupt, right? The banks are saying, don't collect the rent, don't collect we're not going to bankrupt anyone, etc., etc. So what's going to come in? There's going to be helicopter money coming in. There's going to be money printed continuously from the RBA. They're going to be injecting into the stock market. They're going to be injecting into companies, into wages to keep people at home, etc. Never in the history, right? If we look at the Great Depression, why this is not the Great Depression is in the Great Depression, it didn't even have this sort of impact, right? We've gone on we didn't even have a recession. We didn't even allow a recession to happen. We will get it, but we're just printing straight through it. And this is not going to end well, guys. It's not going to end well for a lot of people. I'm talking to people that won't end well for. It's going to end up not well for the people who save. Let's say that someone's got, oops, nearly knocked the bottle over. Let's say someone's got 100K in the bank account. It's reported that in 1920, that someone in Weimar, Germany, could have retired with 50,000 marks in their Reichsmark, in their, I think it was Reichsmark, whatever the currency was at the time, it was mark. They could retire on 50,000 marks, which would be like having 5 mil today. And within 3 years, they closed the bank account and didn't send you a letter because the postage stamp was worth more than that. So if someone has 100K and they can buy paddle pops, let's work this quickly. Paddle pops at $2.40. That means they can get 400 per 1,000, and then 40,000 paddle pops you can buy. Right? If inflation hits so hard in the future, you might only be able to buy paddle pops go to $4.80, and you'll only be able to buy 20,000 paddle pops at the time. So the purchasing power of the dollar will decline. The biggest losers out of this is going to be the people that save. Will there be a bailout? I'm excited to see what stimulus packages come next. Every time I see it, it just cracks me up. It's fantastic to see this money. As people have talked about here, the fractional reserve banking. I'll give you a bit of a rundown. Just thanks for Hayden to bring that one up because it's important for everyone. Let's look up what fractional reserve banking is. Fractional reserve. This is how the banks work. Do you think the money is at the bank? I've got a question here just from Tim as well, just while this is loading. Would now be a good time to buy a new car? There's so many levers at this point being pulled. It's not, he says he's eating a paddle pop. The rainbow one's the best. Yeah, it's mad. There's so many levers being pulled. So there's something that I bought a Jeep. I bought a Jeep, one of those SRT things, maybe like 5 years ago before I bought the Bentley. And that car I bought for $80,000, and last time I looked, they were selling for 100. One of my mates bought one; it was 100 grand, and they might even be 110 or 120 without even looking at the moment. And I was like, it occurred to me at the time that the car actually went up in value, and the car didn't go up in value. It's just that we were importing them from the US, and the cost of the dollar falling compared to the US dollar made that car more expensive. So there's all different ways that we can benefit from this. There's all different ways that we can lose with this, but it's important to have a good understanding of money and how it works. So let's go to Wikipedia. Actually, no, let's not go to Wikipedia. That's a very shitty place to go. Let's go to Investopedia. It's probably no better. What is fractional reserve banking? Fractional reserve banking is a system in which only a fraction of bank deposits are backed by actual cash, right? Hayden just wrote here, the Fed told American banks they do not even actually have to hold reserves. So this is a very, very important topic. A lot of people, when I went to the shops the other day, I was driving. I was doing like 5 hours of driving and phone calls. And I drove past the KFC and I thought, oh, those chip packets that got me in, right? The packet of KFC chips with extra salt. And I went in. Big signs everywhere. You'll die if you have money, basically, right? That's what it is, right? We're only taking credit card, FPOS card. It's all digital credits, right? It's an illusion of wealth because it's not actual. You're not allowed to touch money. You might catch the flu from playing with money. Someone's put their disease on this money. So it's a great way to scare people. So that's why I call it the scamdemic. But basically, if we have a bank run, if we go to negative interest rates, and I had some smart asses on, I think it was YouTube. I always get these haters that try and write shit, especially on YouTube. And they said to me, they said on, I forget what I was going to say about them. I saw some haters writing something. I forget what it was. I'll come back to it later. I forget what it was. I forget where I was going. With too much going on in my head at once. But with it... Okay, no, here we go. My haters on YouTube said the Federal Reserve, the RBA have all come out and said, look, we are not going negative rates. We will not go negative interest rates, right? Well, it was only 12 months ago, 12 months ago from now, that this fucking dodgy prick, I told you in this time last year that we would see a rate cut within from 90 to 120 days. I know there's a few of you watching here that remember me saying that at a live speech, and I've got it on video recording, but it's not on YouTube. It's not part of the mentoring program. But I said between 90 and 120 days, we would see a rate cut. So 30-day window, not before 90, not after 120. In that 30 days, we'd see a rate cut. This fucker said at the same time that we would not be seeing any rate cuts and interest rates would most likely go up. And what happened on the 4th of June last year, this fucker made interest rates go down by 0.25%. Same guy now is saying that rates will not go negative. Will they go negative or won't they go negative? I don't know, right? But the reality of it is that interest rates are now at 0.25%, right? If they go up from 0.25% one time, it'll go to 0.5%. That's 100% growth, right? Never in the history of the world has this happened beforehand. It has happened in modern time during the GFC in a few countries, but now every country has 0% interest rates. If interest rates go up, the countries will go bankrupt. I believe, I see here from Ashley saying, been seeing these no cash signs everywhere lately, microchip, paywave. If you go to certain books, it'll talk about a mark of the beast, right? And that's something that it's very interesting that it appears that that's where society is going. And what a great time alive to be to see this sort of stuff sort of unfold. Going digital, they're tracking everything. If the interest rates go negative, then everybody will pull their money out of the bank, and there'll be no chance for them to have fractional reserve banking. Hence why it appears that they are making um, the system become cashless before they go negative, right? And what a great way to have no cash is just to say, oh, disease is going to make your money. You can't touch it. No one wants to take it. Go hand it in, put it in at the bank. Everyone puts it in at the bank. Then they say, we're going to remove money. Is that a cause? I don't know. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? But it's very, very interesting. If you're not able to pull your money out of the bank, there cannot be a bank run. What is fractional reserve banking? It's a system where only a fraction of the bank deposits are backed by actual cash on hand. In Australia, we have about 3% of money is actual physical cash. That's what it used to be. They've just watered it down, so there's probably only 2% worth of money out there that's physical cash. So they don't even worry about printing this stuff anymore. They just put IOUs in the vault, call them bonds, and package them up, and create a Ponzi scheme. This is done to theoretically expand the economy by freeing capital for lending. Banks are required to keep on hand a certain amount of cash that depositors give them, but the banks are not required to keep the entire amount on hand. The banks are required to keep 10% of the deposit, referred to as reserves. Some banks are exempt from holding reserves, but all the banks are paid at a rate of interest on reserves. So the reality, the reality of it is that there's interbank lending as well. So, like, let's say, for instance, if we all have $1 million in reserves, and if I went to, say, I'm on ANZ, and I go to NAB and ask them, can I borrow, $1 million? They could technically lend me that, and then there's new capital being created between the banks. If we look at the repo market in the US, what we saw happening from November 11th last year. I actually wish I had printed some more stuff off, because as we're talking here, I'm thinking of a lot of other stuff to share with you. But the repo market in the US, which is why the market started taking off from September last year to early this year, is because the New York Fed were actually buying the bonds, the short-term bonds, which changed the yield curve, which was an inverted yield curve, and made it positive again and straightened it back out. This is stuff that's never been, well, it's been seen, but in very, very weird and specific examples. The banks aren't required to keep the entire amount on hand. So if you put $1,000 in the bank can then lend out $10,000 to someone else, right? They're allowed to lend an extra $9,000 on your money. So they can basically create money out of thin air at the bank. That's what fractional reserve banking is. And as we saw Hayden's comment before, and he said the Fed told American banks they don't even need to hold the reserves anymore. They don't even need to have any backing of the money. They can just, if they don't have enough, just print some and we'll sort it out later. That is a point where the money is losing any of its value that's left over. Will we see, a hyperinflation today? I don't believe so, but I do believe that they need to put some capital controls in place. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how they handle this. For those of you that are only tuning at the moment, we have literally seen thousands upon thousands of different fiat currencies. Fiat currency, I'll actually get the term of fiat just to get it correct in case anyone wants to pull me up on it. My phone won't turn on. They're watching. If we look at what fiat money is, fiat money is being defined variously as any money declared by a government to be a legal tender. State-issued money which is neither convertible by law to any other thing nor fixed in value terms or any objective standard. Intrinsically valueless money used as money because the government decree. Right? This is fiat currency that we are using. There will be a point. We're at a point where they can't put the interest rates up. We've already just gone through that. Interest rates go up from 25 basis points to 50 basis points. It just goes up one notch. It's double the amount of what it is. We can't get back from this level of where we're at the moment. We're at a currency crisis. My predictions of this is that the central banks will need a bailout. We could use a two-tier monetary system, meaning that there's a cash society and a cashless society. So we could have the dollar, which we have now. In my opinion, they're going to come in and say that we've got a dollar, and I think that later on, when they start using these, the shops that are open at the moment, they might have like a Visa card or a MasterCard, which is a preloaded card, and they put these e-dollars in it. The e-dollar cannot be transferable for cash, and then they start pushing more people and start inflating this currency, and then they phase out this currency. However, there's two currencies running. You've got $1 million here, $1 million here. You've still got two currencies, so we're still going to see the same level of inflation. I believe that the RBA, all the central banks around the world will end up getting bailed out. So in 2008, we saw some companies go bankrupt. We saw some people go bankrupt. We saw people's properties get lost. This is not a property bubble. This is not a bubble of shares. It's not a bubble of credit cards. It's not a bubble of auto loans. It is the money that's being printed and given away. In 2008, people had shitty old cars still. In 2020, if you have a car that's older than 5 years, then your car's considered as a shitbox. And that's why we don't see old cars on the road anymore, because they are just derivatives of auto loans. I posted a Trump post earlier into Birchfeed. It was a post that said cash for clunkers. So anyone's got a car that's like over 5 years old, the government's paying money to cash in your old clunker car and be able to. Oh, there we go. I just got a message. Scott Morrison is premiering a video, support you and your family through the coronavirus crisis. So, he's on there. So I might lose some viewers now while we go and hop into seeing what Scammo is doing. So there's a cute name for a Scammo. The thing is that Trump's doing this thing in the US. It's called Cash for Clunkers, basically buying up all the old cars. They destroy them, basically burning money in order to make other people go out and purchase money to manipulate that system to keep it going. But we're at our last legs. As I described beforehand, many other sort of currencies that we've seen across the country. There was a currency which I didn't get to it here. It was the currency. Here we go. The state of currency at federation. So if we look at this is how it would have played out if it was only an economy. Exactly. The currency at federation. At federation, so 1901, and for a period afterwards, the currency used in Australian colonies, which became states instead of British silver and copper coins, Australian minted gold sovereigns worth £1 and half sovereigns, locally minted copper trade tokens suppressed in 1881, some states earlier, and private banknotes. In addition, the Queensland government issued treasury notes from 1866 to 1869 and banknotes from 1893 to 1910, which were legal tender in Queensland. The New South Wales government issued a limited series of treasury notes in 1893. The Perth Mint opened in 1899, which gold miners would deposit their raw gold for gold coins. Cool, thanks, Hayden. Hayden's going to go and watch Scammo, and then he's going to come back and tell us what's going on with Scammo over there. But basically these currencies have been collapsing, throughout history. This is a currency crisis. It's not a scamdemic. It's a currency crisis. The death of the fiat monetary Ponzi scheme that we've had, and that's why I like assets. When I started this business, I saw a post, and we made a post just yesterday actually about B.Invested being around for 11 years, and I started the business in March 2009, and it was in the midst of the GFC. And in the last 11 years seen a lot of changes, a lot of things go on that are sort of crazy. However, we called the business B.Invested and not property or anything like that because, we're investors, and investment's what we do. And looking at different investing strategies, property is a really cool vehicle, but we need to have a good relationship with money, how money works, or how currency works. As I put up the top here, it's not money, it's currency. If we look at Google, let's go back to Google again and look up the technical differences between what is the difference between money and currency. If you have a look at Google, it doesn't actually have an answer for that. So if we have a look here, someone's put on Quora, that Quora website. When we talk about finances, this is just fresh, I haven't read it beforehand. Three most commonly misunderstood words are money, currency, and wealth. Most people seem to think that paper notes they carry around in their pocket or purse are real money. It's certainly not. This is what's known as currency, fiat currency. Currency is simply paper. This paper money is a tool for trading your time. Currency has no intrinsic value. One of the biggest problems with currency is that the governments can print more and more of it whenever they want or need to. Historically, there have been thousands of currency, and all fiat currency which are not backed by gold and silver have gone to zero. There's a 100% failure rate for fiat currencies. We are here in 2020 with a fiat currency. People don't see this coming because we've been born into a matrix where we are told to believe, told to use this, and we're going to be brainwashed to use it in the next currency that they create, whether it be a physical fiat currency, whether it be a digital illusion of wealth, such as like state-owned, world-owned, IMF style, potential cryptocurrency. People ask me about Bitcoin cryptocurrency. I'm a big fan of it. As I started the video beforehand, I had a crypto song that I did, a rap song, talking about crypto. There is a lot of value there. However, we're heading to a phase where this could get in the hands of the wrong people. If these central banks be able to create their own one, if we look at, I don't have it. Maybe someone. I see Hayden's pretty active today in our video. Maybe if you can find the Economist magazine cover and post a comment of it in the questionnaire box, and you guys can have a look at the a picture on here of the Phoenix on the 1988 Economist magazine. I'd love if someone could share that with us. That'd be great, and we could all refer back to that. But basically, I feel that we're going to head into some form of digital currency. It's going to be like a special drawing rights. Everyone's going to get a universal basic income using this current dollar scheme. If we look at the currency and the collapse of it, it's communism. It's communism which we're heading into. If we look at this guy's post here that we're looking up about currency, what's the difference between currency and money? Money is a store of value and it maintains its purchasing power over a long period of time. So the definition of money could be used as gold, could be used as silver. A lot of people refer to this. I'm not banging on to say go and buy gold and silver. I'm not banging on not to. I personally own 7 figures of this stuff, and I'm not really going to go into it. But I've collected it over the years, and I like it. And it's stored in specific locations, which are outside of control, where people can sort of control that or get to it. I do know people that store money in different countries. When I say money, like gold and silver in different countries, to be diverse all around the world. But yeah, there's all different ways of storing it. But yeah, with it, silver and gold has been the optimum form of money because of its properties. You can store large amounts of it in very small areas. Only silver and gold have maintained their purchasing power over the last 5,000 years. So it's said if you go and look at Mike Maloney, he's got a video series called The Hidden Secrets of Wealth or Hidden Secrets of Money. He talks about this a lot, about it being divisible, about it being tangible, about it being able to flow very easily throughout communities and whatnot. Money is an ultimate store of value. I like to have my money invested into real assets such as real estate, cryptocurrencies, businesses. I store my wealth in all different types of asset classes. But yeah, a lot of people will bang on about the stuff that I'm talking about and talk about it as gold and silver. So just be very clear, be very careful. A lot of videos, people talking about similar sort of stuff that I talk about, a lot of rabbit holes you go down to. People will just be banging on silver, gold, silver, gold, silver, gold. There's reasons why I'm not a massive fan of this stuff. I do like it. However, if we look at the controlling hands being these satanic motherfuckers that control things, look at that. Just go and look at the those logos. Look at the logos behind it. Look at it. Look at it. Wow, look at it. Yeah, it's very interesting. But when we look at the website, the rba.gov.au, you'll notice that it says that it is a copyright on it. If we go and let's look at, give me some gov websites, so like say health.gov.au. If we look at the health website, it's got a lot of stuff going on it. It says here, copyright the Commonwealth of Australia, has the Australian Department of Australian Health. We look at ato.gov.au, has the Australian Government Tax Office on it, has the same logo. Come down the bottom, Australian Tax Office, copyright. If we look at back at the RBA website, there is not even one single government reference to it, and it has the Reserve Bank of Australia 2021, all rights reserved, in the bottom of it. These are private entities, guys. They own government, they control government, and we're seeing the demise of the dollar. If we see some sort of global sort of currency, I believe that's where we're heading. I just having a look at some of your questions here. I'll get some of your questions. Is cryptocurrencies good? I like crypto, and very heavily invested. Got Birch Feed today. Thanks for checking in the Birch Feed. If you're not on Birch Feed already, email my team, send a private message on here, send over your phone number, and my team will get you in the Birch Feed straight away, so you can get to see other people talking about all of this stuff. Dave, fiat doesn't get caught in Australia. No one did anything when Nixon unpegged the dollar. We will reap the results from the seed sown in the 1970s. Josh, Birchfield's great, love it, appreciate the support. The Romans used to clip silver and gold coins and remelt them to make new coins. As the coins got smaller, they used to add copper and nickel to them. And when they started circulating the market, storeholders used to keep gold and silver coins and hide them from only trade back out the shit coins. The Roman Empire collapsed not long after. Nobody wanted their copper coins. Civilizations around the world, if you look at the fall of any great civilization, they always fell when their currency collapsed. And this time is not a country, right? We've seen Venezuela, Zimbabwe, South Africa. They've all experienced forms of hyperinflations. I think one of the worst hyperinflations that ever occurred happened around the 1940s to the 1950s in Hungary. From some of my research, if my memory serves me well, this has literally happened in every country around the world beforehand. However, this is the first time ever that every single currency is falling at the same time. It's just a very, very strange phenomenon. And if you look at the actions that are being maneuvered, we can start to see where these things are going to head to. Hayden, central banks buy government bonds with cash they made up out of thin air, Scammo, that's his new name, Scammo, goes to ask Big Daddy Philip Lowe for some money and writes him a promise to pay with future workers' taxes, and Philip goes inside his empty building and writes an amount of bit of paper, and boom, you have more currency. Yes, that's correct. This money is just being printed. It's a game that they're printing. And the more money that they print, the less purchasing value those dollars have that you have. So need to understand that, guys. Need to understand it. So, you know, it's just a very interesting time. Wade, if when hyperinflation happens, won't that mean we can pay the property off faster, like the 13K house land for 55 years ago? I could pay off now in a month. Am I wrong? Wouldn't that be a positive? Yes, that would be correct in my examples, but I have not lived in a situation like that. My belief is before that happens, there'll be a lot of people begging, and the value of the money disappears that quickly that you won't even be able to buy food and stuff like that. So I believe debt becomes relevant with inflation. That's always been my motto. And with a hyperinflation, it would disappear much quicker. So you're holding the assets in your hand very, very quicker. For all us done working hard family men, do we sell our home and live our dreams where we wanted to, or try and stay in Sydney and invest and try and work like dogs? I am not as smart as you. Off-topic dream, we'll just have to work guaranteed every day. Will Sydney come back? Look, there's a very interesting question there, Alf. What I'm experiencing at the moment is, if we look at the stock market's lost 40% in a month. The super funds have lost a lot of money recently. Corporate profits are taking a belting. However, there's a flight to safety. People are buying property, right? And people might accuse me of being a property spruiker. I've certainly talked about property in a negative light in previous years. When I said people should be cautious and whatnot, but what I'm seeing is an uptick in property. Time will tell. I believe we'll see property prices hold up quite well. We'll be heading into a boom. I wouldn't say that right this minute. People are commenting. I'm trying to get rid of their messages, and it's trying to take me away from the video. But yeah, I'm not selling my properties. I'm trying to buy more properties because I want to pay off my debt from today's debt with tomorrow's dollars. So if you can have an asset, if you got, let's say someone's got a mortgage of 300 grand, you might be on 50 grand a year now, but you might be on 100 grand a year in 2 years' time. You might be on 200 grand in 3 years' time. You might be on 300 grand in 4 years' time. That's not because your income's rising. It's just that there's so much money. You're getting more money, but your cost of everything's going up in value. You can pay that property off quicker using devalued currency into the future. So that's my view on it. That's my take on it. And I'm no financial advisor. Always put that disclaimer in there. However, that's how I view money, and I believe I've got a very good relationship with money and understand it. And I'm just trying to, for everyone out there, I'm trying to relay very complicated situations and make them very simple explanations here. So, Jay, what are the areas to look for now ahead of the time? What indications are there that will push the RBA into a drop? Indications, as I said beforehand, we're seeing them print so much money. We're in a recession. We're in a depression. No one knows it yet. No one's seen it fall off a cliff. We're starting to see it fall off a cliff, and they have to pull out stops. There will be a point. They're paying people's wages. They're paying people to have staff. They're paying people to live. They're going to be ending up paying people's fucking mortgages soon. They're going to be paying everything. So I'm just waiting for the bailouts. They're going to pay all that stuff for us. Like, this money is going to lose, or the currency is going to lose its value. So, everything will rise. So should we go and buy in Sydney? Should we buy in Melbourne? Should we buy in the Gold Coast? Should we buy in Western Australia? Should we buy in Tasmania? That's probably more of a topic for so we don't pollute a currency video with property stuff. And there's probably a video that I'll do shortly talking about what's happening in the markets, what are the fundamentals to drive up those property markets. I think that'll be well overdue for one of them. If they can never raise interest rates and respect the economy, what will happen when people cannot afford things anymore and the RBA cannot lower the rates? We could end up into a negative rate situation. I'm just going to have a look at this article, and I talked about this beforehand, and I want to get everyone to this article. Actually, I'm just having a look here. I've seen a new article. The ING is an article. ING, the second Netherlands bank to turn to negative savings interest. Banking institution ING has become the second bank in the Netherlands to charge a negative interest rate on certain savings accounts. Customers will face a negative 50 basis point rate for any amount in an account above 1 million euros, the bank said on Friday. The policy will affect about 6,400 clients. The negative rate is charged per account and not per customer. Rabobank is the latest bank to introduce negative interest rates. This is in February 2020. So let's think about this, right? It's March. We're starting to see all this Corona scam and the scamdemic come through, but we've seen these banks reducing their rates to negative over the period of months leading up to here. Rabobank is the latest bank to introduce negative interest rates. 14th of February 2020 on Valentine's Day. Private non-millionaire customers will continue to get the 0.1% interest rate. Business customers with savings between 100,000 euros and 1 million already have a 0% interest rate. Mortgage rates. This is the article here for everybody. It is an article from The Guardian. And it says Danish bank launches world's first negative interest rate mortgages. A Danish bank has launched the world's first negative interest rate mortgage, handing out loans to homeowners where the charge is a minus 5.5% a year. So if you had $1 million loan with this bank, you'd get $5,000 a year back from the bank for taking the money. Like, it's unsustainable. But in a world where we are today, it's not looking so crazy. But what we've got to remember is, imagine when I was younger, I used to go out and party, go and drink up, come home smash, spend the day after, try not to chuck up. And, if you did that every day, you'd be unsustainable, right? And, people that go out, party, get themselves into trouble, whatnot, it's unsustainable. Like, there's got to be a point where that's going to have a negative impact onto your body or whatever. You smoke. A lot of people made fun about me breathing the other day when I was walking around the stairs of a motel. I used to smoke 2 packs a day, right? If I keep smoking 2 packs a day, it will have a negative effect on my body, which isn't cool. So I made the choice not to. And if we look at the economy is very, very much the same, right? You can't just keep having this debt-fueled, orgy that we've been having for the last, 50 years and expect it to keep going on. At some point, something's going to go wrong. The light's going to come on, and everyone's like, "Oh fuck, I've got to go home and sleep." So, that's sort of where we're at. Like, negative interest rates is not going to end up in a positive light. It's never been seen before. Won't the RBA just raise rates by 0.15 to ease the load instead of 0.25 as a double if rates go up? If they raise the rates by 0.15, it's still up, 60% on the mortgage rate. So they got this checkmate. Excess cash in the economy will always end up in two places, and two places only: business and land. Exactly. That's why I like property for. Property is a good vehicle. The debt becomes worthless, and I can pay it off easier. Josh, hey Nathan, do you see the lower end properties doing better at the moment because the minimum earning will be set by the government stimulus? Yes, very important, Josh. Thanks for asking that question. Do I see the lower end properties doing better? Yes, that's why I've always talked about buying specific type of properties. People have laughed at me and gone, "Oh, you buy, shit properties." I'm going to start grading properties that I buy, and I'd say I'd buy like a C grade property as predominantly, a couple of A grades, a little bit of B grade, predominantly C grade, a couple of D grade that I've had in there over the years. Those properties that are, bread and butter, blue collar, battler sort of areas, those properties, everyone is getting stimulus. Like if we're looking at someone getting Centrelink and getting benefits from the government, someone was on a dole already. They're getting double the amount of dole now, right? There's more money flowing into that family, so they've got more money to spend. They should not be paying the rents. They should be paying the rents and having excess money left over. But it's just an interesting time, and the lower end of the properties will be least affected because the downside has been removed or minimised. Mel, how do you manage your rental increases during a hyperinflation? Is there a maximum number of rental increases per year per property? I have never been through a hyperinflation, Mel, and it would be very interesting to see. I'm excited to see it. I did another video just a little while ago, which is also on Facebook and YouTube, about hyperinflation. So if you haven't seen the hyperinflation video, I encourage everybody to go and watch the hyperinflation specific video. But I've never been through a hyperinflation. It could be in 6 months' time, could be in 5 years' time, could be in 10 years' time. But I don't believe that we will survive this decade, and it might only be another 3 to 5 years whilst we've got this currency using the dollar before we go to some form of e-dollar. And I will write it on the board. So if you guys want to screenshot this, a couple of words, and we've spoken about this in the mentoring program beforehand. SDR and IMF. IMF will bail out the central banks, will bail out the government, and it's inevitable that these things are going to happen. They're going to make a thing called a special drawing right, and I'll talk about what a special drawing right is. We'll go and get technical just in case anyone wants to pull me up on it. SDR, state debt recovery. We don't want to see those fuckers. Special drawing right. You go. It's very interesting, right? This is really, really interesting. First thing that pops up in Google is special drawing rights, SDR. The SDR is an international reserve asset. Look at the date, 24th of March 2020. They have just updated it. SDR is an international reserve asset created by the IMF in 1969 to supplement its member countries' official reserves. So far, SDR 204.2 billion, equivalent to 281 billion, have been allocated to members, including an SDR of 182.6 billion allocated in 2009 in the wake of the global financial crisis. The value of the SDR is based on a basket of 5 currencies: the US dollar, the euro, the Chinese renminbi, the Japanese yen, and the British pound sterling. The role of the SDR was created as a supplementary international reserve asset in the context of the Bretton Woods fixed exchange rate system. The collapse of the Bretton Woods system in 1973 and the shift to major currencies floating on exchanges rate regimes lessened the reliance on the SDR as a global reserve asset. Nonetheless, the SDR allocation can play a role in providing liquidity and supplementing member countries' official reserves, as was the case amid the global financial crisis. The SDR reserves a unit of account of the IMF and some other international organisations. The SDR is neither a currency nor a claim on the IMF, rather it is a potential claim on the freely usable currencies of the IMF members. SDRs can be exchanged for these currencies. I believe that we will see a And SDR coming out globally, and the IMF bailing out the central banks and the governments around the world. But yeah, just interesting. Would you recommend money in managed super fund put directly into property assets within a fund? Good question, Ian. Thanks for being on board. I am not allowed to talk about super funds. Sometimes I've been, drunk at the pub, talking to my friends. I don't go to the pub, but anyway, sometimes I've been at the pub in the past, and talking about certain topics that I wouldn't normally talk about, or financial advice, just a bit over a bit of banter. And my always question that I ask everyone is: if you have money in a super fund, who is it that is managing your super? Who's the person you deal with there? What are they investing your money into? A lot of people say, oh, they put in the shares and they put in the property and it's safe. And it's like, okay, well, tell me, what are those shares that your super fund has bought, and where is the property that your super fund has bought? They're not actually shares, and they're not actually properties in there. They're derivatives of these things, right? So let's say that a said shopping centre wants to build a new car park or put an extra part of their shopping centre. They don't go to the big four banks and say, hey, excuse me, Mr. Big Four Banks, can we do a reval? I want to pull out some equity and I want to go and invest it into a new shopping centre at a 95% LVR and I'll pay you mortgage insurance. These guys need to get their funding from other types of areas. And a lot of this liquidity flows through. So you could just be financing potentially a car park, a shopping centre. You could be purchasing, if we go back to the GFC, you had like Centro. There was a management rights to the Centro, and there was the actual asset of Centro. What happened during the GFC is both of those companies went under, and we do not know what could be in a super fund. So it's important that you speak to a financial advisor about what to do in your super fund, because someone that's not a financial advisor cannot give advice. However, if you would like to, you can reach out to my office. I do not trust financial advisors. Most of them are fucking wankers, and they try and sell you shares and manage funds and stuff like that. I know 2 financial advisors which I've worked through pre-GFC, and I liked how they carry themselves, and maybe it might be worthwhile having a chat with them. They're the only 2 that I trust, and be able to get some feedback and some advice on what you can do within your super fund, whether that may be putting it all in some sort of property part of it, maybe putting it in the cash, maybe it could be setting up your own self-managed super fund. But you would need to speak to a financial advisor, because I'm sure as hell of the belief that ASIC loves to watch my videos, and don't want to go against what process may be from the communist government. Lots of comments here. Of the RBA gives the Commonwealth Bank 100 million and says go lend that out to the market. The Commonwealth Bank can now keep that as reserves and lend out $1 billion to the market. Correct. Fractional reserve banking, as Hayden pointed out there, if the RBA was to give a said bank $100 million, they could go and keep that as security, just as you would give them like a 20% deposit and go and borrow 80% of a loan. They can keep that as a 10% deposit as cash in the bank, and they can lend out $100 billion as the total amount. Amir, why do you think that we did not see the hyperinflation after GFC? There was a lot of hype back then around hyperinflation due to quantitative easing by the Fed and the ECB, but obviously it didn't happen. Thoughts? Good question. We still had a little bit of movement from where we were at the time, but we're at a point where we've got like a big elastic band stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching, and it came back where it was like loose and it was like elongated, and then we're now stretching that, and it's about to fucking snap. It's brittle, it's frail, it's been in the sun, and that's where I believe the economy is at. I could be wrong, guys, but you can't admit that printing this amount of money can be orchestrated without some sort of financial calamity coming out of the other side of it. Ross, hey Nathan, how does a redraw offset against loan accounts fit into hyperinflation or inflation scenario? So let's assume that someone has 100 grand loan at the moment and they're getting paid 50 grand a year income. That 50 grand income would service the debt, and everyone would be able to relate to 50 grand and 100 grand right at the moment. However, in a hyperinflation scenario, someone buying a said asset would be paying a lot more for it. The cost of money would be much cheaper. That 50 grand income may turn into a 500 grand income or $1 million income. With that income, you still got the debt of $100,000. It's much easier to service that debt, pay for that debt, and yeah, I've never been through a hyperinflation, guys, so I do not know firsthand. All I can look at is currencies around the world. Yeah, it's a very interesting time. Mahmood, you forgot that New South Wales government banned fixing, repairing of write-off cars. Exactly. These sort of measures that come into place in order to dispose of the asset, in order to keep those things chugging along. Whatever that guy's name was, I remember his name, but just so we don't insult too many people here, that used to be the Premier of New South Wales. Notice that he got all these infrastructure projects in. I thought it was the most amazing Premier that we've ever seen. He came in, did a job, got all these infrastructure projects, and now he's working for a bank on some income that's like 10 times the amount whatever the government would pay. And it's just interesting to see, the hands at play, and the opportunities are out there. And it's like when you pull back the veil and look at the matrix for what it really is, it's just a very interesting world. Hayden said here the money needs to be transferable, divisible, and a store of value. Correct. Patrick, Rainman was right about the near future when they were asked him about how much was a Mars bar, about $100. Luca, if there is a hyperinflation and a cheeseburger costs $50 tomorrow, what happens to the prices of gold and silver generally? So everything will rise in the value of the money debasement. So technically, a cheeseburger should go up, a mobile phone should go up, the cost of a highlighter should go up, the cost of sheets of paper should go up, the cost of whiteboard cleaner should go up. There is talks about potential manipulation of futures and having ETFs and whatnot, which do sort of affect and suppress the value of commodities, so derivatives. Prices can sort of affect the prices of the actual physical. And if you look at gold and silver at the moment, if you go to a bullion dealership and try and buy gold and silver at the moment, the spot price versus the actual price is a big premium. So I haven't tried to get any bullion recently, but I believe that there's like a $5 to $6 premium above spot at the moment, which a lot of people are complaining about, and that is showing evidence and cracks of this system unfolding at the moment. Wade, keep Europe booming, getting ready for a world currency. Exactly, that's what we're sort of looking at. Ash saw the other day, government needs to unite to fight the corona scam pandemic, other way to go global. Wade, the 1988 economist. Yes, so no one actually posted the image here of what I was talking about beforehand, but on the front page, if you type in the 1988 Economist magazine, you will see a phoenix rising up, a bird, and it's got a gold chain around its neck, and it says 10 on it with a Masonic symbol. It says 10/10/2018. And if we actually go back to the markets, I encourage you guys, just for the exercise of this, I did describe this in my mentoring program going back on the 10th of October, or just a few days after that actually. Remember the 10th of October because that's the day when in the US it was the 10th, here it was the 11th. It was the launch day of Birchfeed came out on the 11th of October here. It was also my nephew's wedding on the 11th, and I remember seeing that's when the yield curve inverted. and stock markets fell off. So if you actually go back and look at charts that say like the Dow Jones, I'll try and dig up a photo of it at the moment. The Dow Jones fell off on that day. Dow Jones chart. 5-year. If we look here, here's the Dow Jones. You can see there, the 12th of October, thereabouts, it fell down briefly and lost control. And then till about December, when we get it here, about Boxing Day right at the bottom. There's 28th of December right at the bottom. And then suddenly it took back off. 10/10/2018, and a rise of some sort of one world money. And I encourage you to go and look at that photo, think about it, and think about the collapse of all the currencies. They predicted this sort of shit 30 years beforehand, or did they create it? Or was it a calculated point in history? Kane, other than physical property, leverage debt associated with that property is the next best asset. Agree. Look, I like property. I like precious metals, like a few of you guys have alluded to. I also like cryptocurrencies. I like shares. I'm not heavily invested in shares at the moment. As I pointed out the other day, if someone had have told me that if someone had have shown you a chart of that occurring, apart from the manipulation and fraud at the other end there, where are we here, where it's starting to increase. Like, how is the market increasing when the market's just sort of collapsed? So, we haven't even seen, all the job layoffs yet or anything like that. You would have thought that represented an alien invasion. You wouldn't have thought that. And, I think there'll be more blood on the street. I may be wrong. I'm not a financial advisor. However, I will be buying paper assets when they do become my price range of when I feel that it's good buying. Basically, the cost of a texter will be more in the next 5 years. The cost of this cloth will be more in the next 5 years. Used condoms will be worth more in 5 years' time. Just the fact of the economy. So, yeah. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I wasn't meant to be so blunt on it. Sorry. How does the bank make money if they're paying people to take out the loans? How can they survive on the other over the long term? Good point. Let's just look at some basic numbers here. Looking at the bank, if let's say the interest rate is negative 2%, and the bank gives you 0.5%, there's still a spread there of, I won't put it negative there, there's a 1.5% spread. So even though they're giving you 0.5%, they're getting 2% for taking the money from the RBA or whatever the central bank is. So if the bank was to give, then the point of that bank in the Netherlands beforehand that we looked at, if they're giving away 0.5%, they might be getting 2% for taking the money out and then shipping the debt off. So there's a spread there from the bank. Scott, new article only a few hours ago, bond rate falls through the RBA target. The three-year bond rate has fallen below the central bank's 0.25% target for the first time since market intervention, providing encouragement that QE program is working. How do interest rates relate to this? They're going to have to throw the whole kitchen sink at the situation that we have at the moment. Is it interest rates? They may not give more interest rate cuts, but they might do other sorts of intervention, as we've seen just the other day, like 2 days ago. They gave everyone $1,500 per fortnight per staff member that's been employed for more than a year if your business has lost more than 30%. There is disclaimers there, and certain businesses get stuff, certain businesses don't. And certain people get stuff and certain people don't. But this is going to be, just like when people say, well, what's the point of working if I get more by being on the dole? I'm sure the same thing's going to flow through the business world and whatnot. This is a time of change. If you can be ahead of that curve and look at what their next move may be, you can sort of pick up before their trends. So having the almanac in Back to the Future before the sports game and having that knowledge, that sort of sets you up to be able to make those bets and be able to make those choices. So, yeah. Wow. Yeah, wow. I've just seen a new article here around the rental stimulus. So I'm just going to go into the article here. Pete has posted an article from the Courier Mail in Queensland. Coronavirus QRD Treasurer Jackie Trad reveals an emergency rental assistance payment up to $500 per week. So she understands people are incredibly fearful that they may not be able to pay their rent and pledge whatever it is in Queensland to March 29th. The government had set up a grant program that offers emergency rental assistance, payment of up to $500 per week for up to 4 weeks for Queenslanders who cannot make rent. Very, very interesting times. I think we're going to see more of this sort of stimulus packages. In my opinion, and just on the note of rentals, I made a video of this earlier on today. With rents, tenants should still be paying their rents. If they have no job, they should be speaking to their real estate agent. I have seen some emails. I had a couple of mates that have properties with agents that fall outside of my management areas here at Blink. And they said that their owners had sent out these emails asking the tenants, can you pay your rent? How much rent can you pay? Like questionnaires. And I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And those real estate agents are absolute dickheads for doing so. What I think is important is all tenants need to be paying the rent. If they cannot afford the rent, they must talk to the real estate agent because they're in a contractual agreement. They need to be speaking with their property manager, telling them and advising them of the situation. Let's assume that, so I just got these things popping up in the corner of my screen. If someone cannot afford to pay the rent, if they've lost their job, what the said tenant should be doing is providing the real estate office with proof that they have lost their job or their unemployment. And then if they can provide their proof that they've done that, then that is evidence to show that they can, and a separation letter, then that separation letter is what the Centrelink will accept as a, whatever the package is for joblessness, the job seeker or whatever it is, allowance. So in short, if the person has lost their job, they need to prove that they've lost their job. If they've proved they've lost their job, then they can go get Centrelink, and then they can pay you some of that money from Centrelink. And if they can't afford to pay you the whole amount, they need to demonstrate how they can pay you some of that money. And then with that shortfall, as a real estate agent, you should be seeing what sort of plan of attack, putting a plan in place for a payment plan. It's not an opportunity for tenants to scam free rent, and it's something that definitely won't be tolerated in my firm. So yeah, just make sure you're dealing with your tenants right. How do you deal with land tax? It's a killer. It's a cost of doing business. Make sure you've got positive cash flow properties that will cover all your expenses, and you won't have to worry about that. Mate, do you believe in Harry Dent's prediction of Australian property market will go down by 40% by 2023? Look, this guy has been out there talking shit for decades. I don't believe anything that comes out of that guy's mouth. Some of the fundamental stuff, I may side with, but to come out and make these bold statements based on what? He's talking on one side of the story. If you only have one side of a coin, it's not even a coin. You don't even have a fake currency. You've just got nothing. So you need to look at both sides of the story. And that guy looks at one side of the story, in my opinion. So, with it, will house prices go down by 40%? There's a lot more vested interest. The banks would be in negative equity if that was to occur, and the banks would then be bankrupt, and then everybody would lose out, and you would have massive deflation. So we see, just trying to prop up the economy, what they've done is given everyone free jobs, free income, free rent, free whatever, and they've already shown their hand. You can see when you're going to a fight, the first person to take the next step is the one that sort of dies. So we can see their move or hand. If something was to go wrong, they would jump in and stop that from occurring. So these numbers that he puts up are ludicrous, and I disagree with them. So, but hey, I'll put money where my mouth is, and I don't know what he does apart from selling fear. So yeah. James, are we heading for a cashless society? Yes, that's what we covered beforehand. Who owns IMF, Shapeshift and Reptiles? Maybe David Icke was onto something. Yes, I believe potentially, shape-shifting Reptiles very well might likely own that. It's definitely privately controlled by vested interests. If we look at the donations into the WHO, the World Health Organization, it's a George Soros scam with people like Bill Gates who own like 15 or 17% of the World Health Organization. It's people don't realize that sort of stuff. Kane, is mentoring program still going? How do I get some more info about it? Now, if you do want to find out more about the mentoring program, reach out to my office, send a direct message or send an email to my team at admin@binvested.com.au. Firstly, they'll throw you into Birchfeed. Just say, hey, look, I want to get access to Birchfeed, and I welcome the 400% increase of subscribers into Birchfeed recently. But yeah, if you want to get access to the mentoring program, just reach out to my team and they can hook you up with that as well. Ian, how do I get Birchfeed, please? That's what I just talked about. Email my team, send us a message. Thanks for insight. Thanks, Ian, for being here. I know you mentioned a few times you like crypto, but crypto has no intrinsic value, just like the Aussie dollar at the moment. Is there something that you would like to share? Good question, Michael. So with cryptocurrency, I will do a full video on this. I did do a lot of videos on the B.Decentralized page going back 2 years ago. It's been a while since I've been on there talking about cryptocurrency and whatnot. If we look at the value of cryptocurrency as a whole, obviously we've been here for 2 hours, it's a whole other topic. Cryptocurrency does have a lot of value. The reason being is that you need to have computers need to run, works off algorithms, it's a decentralized network. In short, where does crypto's value sit? If we look at this, I'll just show you a slight, small insight as to why I like cryptocurrency. It's not because I'm expecting to get a Lambo. It's not because I'm expecting to go to the moon. For those of you that don't know what cryptocurrency are, a lot of people think that you buy it and get a Lambo very quickly. I bought better cars than Lambos anyway, and I bought them before I had crypto. So if we go to the servo, so let's say that Nathan Birch goes to the servo. You've got the dude standing inside, and he's ready to take your money. He's on his headphones talking to his cousin. And you've got Birchie out here pouring petrol in his car. Just put in his little ute. There he is in his ute. He's there pumping petrol into it. It's diesel, of course. So Birchie spends $100 and he goes to the servo. He goes to pay the servo $100. Because he's not allowed to use his cash anymore, what happens is he has to use his Visa card. How many people are in that transaction? You've got Birchie and 7-Eleven guy. How many people are in that transaction? Let's look at it. You have got Nathan. You have then got the bank. So let's say, just for example, it is St. George. Right? They don't even use St. George. But anyway, let's say it's St. George. And that St. George Bank uses Visa, and then that uses the FPOS terminal, and then that bank, maybe NAB, hypothetically, and then you've got the servo on this end, right? So there's me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 people in that transaction. However, we have got a seventh person. We have the ATO, which is the extortion racket. They're saying, fuck you, we're going to take some money. In this transaction, out of the $100, there might be a 2% merchant fee, meaning that $2 goes to Visa, EFTPOS, bank, whatever, and $98 goes to this end person. That is a transaction, and you've got so many people in that transaction, and it was all centralized. If me and Mr. Servo Guy wanted to do business, we could use cash. And using cash, we'd have to determine if we believe that the value of the money is still worth what we believe the value is. And then if St. George Bank, for example, or NAB, they might say, you know, we don't like Nathan. He seems to be a fucking wanker. We're going to stop using him. I can't get access to my cash. If Visa says we don't like him, they can cancel that. If EFTPOS says that they don't like NAB, then they can cancel. If NAB says the servo is a potential fucking terrorist racket, they can close that off. Right? At any point inside of that, there is no control because it is completely owned via centrally controlled systems. If we look at Bitcoin, for example, I'm just going to use Bitcoin in this example, and I don't know why I'm trying to take this off, but so there were 7 people involved in that transaction. Let's say we're at the servo. And Birchie pumps the petrol, $100, has to give $100 here. How many people using Bitcoin would be involved in this transaction? Well, then you would have NB, you'd have servo, and then you would have the network. And the network consists of thousands upon thousands of millions upon millions of computers and hashing power, which perform the transaction. And what this is worked on is private keys and secure keys and public keys. So basically an account. So if I have my account and the bank has its account, I transfer it into the network, which no one knows, no one controls. It's just a whole pile of computers that are there running algorithms. In the 11, 12 years that it's been in existence, there's never been any period where it slipped up. No one's hacked it. It's unhackable. It goes in that network. All the computers in the network try and work on it. Let's say there's 1 million computers. One of those computers will confirm it, sign off, and the money will go straight to his account. So in this occasion, there's me, the servo, and then this network, right, which is the Bitcoin network. That network, no one gives a shit who I am, who he is, who those numbers of the codes are. As long as those numbers work, the network passes it through and goes from me to servo. No one can stop that network. It's completely decentralized. In this transaction, let's assume that $2 is paid, just for hypothetical. That $2 goes into the network, and then it's split between the people, and the person that did it, that one of 1 million computers that did it, gets the $2 as a reward, and that's the cost of the profit for that guy running the computers. Now, let's go and expand on a little bit further. When you asked about that it has no value, you've got 1 million computers running that cost $200 per month to run. That's $200 million per month in electricity backing up the value of that network. So the more computers that are running, the more electricity that's being run, pushes the value of their currency up. Now, if I'm going into crypto territory, guys, if you want to know why I believe in crypto, is that when you see that exercise of everything getting inflated, let's assume you had $1,000 cash and $1,000 of Bitcoin, BTC, right? Let's say that the value of the $1,000 can buy you 400 paddle pops, and it can buy you 400 paddle pops here, right? let's assume that the value of the dollar dies and you can only buy 200 paddle pops. Right? Hope everyone's following me at the moment because I could lose you here. I'm trying to rush this and not keep you here all night. The value of the 400 people in the Bitcoin, if this lost its value, the value of this would double. Right? And therefore, the amount of paddle pops that you could purchase could still be 400 or it could be 800. This is a devaluing currency, and this is a devaluing currency which is losing its value, and this is a currency which is increasing in its value. So they work very, very differently. You can print as many dollars as you want, as we're seeing at the moment. With Bitcoin, you cannot print any more Bitcoin. There's only a fixed amount of 21 million. They've almost all been harvested, majority, and each 4 years it becomes a halving, which we're about to see in about 2 weeks' time, which means that there's less and less Bitcoins coming out, meaning that these computers that are working are getting less and less money, meaning that the value of it increases. So the quicker that this currency dies, the quicker that this currency will eat that currency. That's why I bet on cryptocurrencies as well, because I know that this is going to die. That's my view on it. I'll do a full video on that a little bit later, though. Yeah, on that note, I see that there's not many more new questions coming through. Actually, Ross here, hey Nathan, referring back to the negative interest rate spread, how would you play out if the RBA and the banks go negative together, if they do it together? Well, if the banks are going negative, it just means the dollar's going to die even quicker because they're going to be paying. If the interest rate's negative, everybody's going to be taking out money, and the cost of goods will go up higher because there's more dollars flowing into the system. So the lower that the interest rates go, the quicker the money will die. The more money that's being printed, the quicker that the currency will die. So, yeah, sorry if this was there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I would love to have done it a lot less clunkier, having a lot more slides and examples and demonstrations here for you guys. But yeah, just it is what it is. It's a complicated conversation, complicated diagrams that we're throwing out there. But on that note, I just want to say thank you for everyone for tuning in this evening. Keep the hustle real, everyone. Keep kicking ass throughout this period. Thanks a lot for tuning in. If you think that you got value out of it, if you could give me a share, a like, a comment, tag your mates, and get the message out there, guys. And just remember, this could be stuff that we'll look at in the future, and you could be like, look, this guy's a fucking complete twat, and everything didn't pan out the way that he said, or you could find that it could be very, very true and correct. And it's understanding how the currencies work and understanding the value of the assets via inflation or deflation, the moves that get made with currencies, and how you can profit from that. Yeah, so on that note, I'm going to Lydia just asked the final question. So is Bitcoin a form of cryptocurrency? Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. It uses cryptographic power by using that computer network. It's very, very technical. Something I could go into one day further. I own a lot of mining farms which I mine crypto and complicated computer networks which print off this money, and something that I'm very, very heavily invested into. I see a big future for it. Should you run out and go and buy a lot of cryptocurrency? No. I think everyone should at least buy $50. People spend more on a lotto ticket or whatever. If you have $50 worth of it and it goes up and down, it sort of tends you to research and try and understand how it works and whatnot. So, yeah, look, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. If you'd like to hear some other topics, feel free to shoot through some messages on what you'd like to hear about next. Thanks a lot for watching. If you do need help with your position, if you do need help, trying to work out a strategy throughout this period, and you do want to get ahead, feel free to hit me up. I've got a promo at the moment where I'm giving away free access to Birchfeed. Normally, there's no access to anyone on how you can even pay to get into Birchfeed. So the only way for you to be able to get into Birchfeed is to email my team or send us a message with your email and phone number on it, and my team will add you into there. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a good evening. Take care, stay safe, and kick ass throughout this scamdemic. Bye for now.